Definitely, 100%. No, I totally agree with that. And it touches on what I've sort of been trying to do before this step in the journey, with Moodbeam. So Moodbeam I created because I wanted to get my youngest daughter to open up at the time and talk about her feelings, and almost provide it as a mechanism. And it was probably the most enjoyable element of that journey was actually talking to the children. We went into a primary school to begin with, and we said to them, what do you think about when you wake up in the morning? Do you ever feel happy or sad? And what we realized was that it's such a personal thing. For some, and I'll never forget her, one little girl said, well, actually, I go into the bathroom before I go to school, and while I'm brushing my teeth for the 3 minutes I have to brush my teeth, I cry because I don't want to go to school, but I don't want mom and dad to see that. And that really, really stuck with me, and still has over all of the conversations we've had, hundreds and hundreds of conversations. The most powerful and honest ones are the ones from the children, because obviously from the age of 7, as you've said, we have this conscious feeling of, oh, I've got a sore tummy, but a sore tummy might be anxiety. And it's that whole ball that sits in your stomach because you feel like you can't let it out. And I think for a lot of the kids that we spoke to over the years, and even now with the GCSE students that I work with at the minute, it's that inability to say to their parents that they feel vulnerable. And there's a whole other chapter that we'll do on secondary PTSD, but inadvertently we as parents sometimes don't speak about stuff because we think we're protecting our kids, but actually what we're doing is delaying it. And I even had a conversation this week with one girl, and I said, you should be really, really proud of yourself. She'd opened up loads about how she was getting her head down and trying to concentrate. And she said, oh, well, my parents don't ever really say about how proud they are of me because they don't want to put me under pressure. So it's massive, that whole element of when to have a conversation. And you're more versed in this than me on the therapeutic side, when to have a conversation when you feel it most. And trying to catch the eye of somebody who you want to support you is probably the biggest deal of all.
Yeah, I think that is important. At the end of the day, whenever we're, again, not being a parent, so I'm sort of talking off the top of my head here, but I can't imagine what it would be like, because now knowing what I know, how vulnerable we are between 0 and 7, that's they talk about us being it's like hypnotized or hypnagogic stage. It's a fancy word for we just take everything in. Not necessarily always what people say, but what we see, what we experience, what we see in our families, what we see out in the playground, what we see, at work, anything like that. We just pick up on conscious and unconscious behaviors of other people. And we always make it, what does that mean for me? Is this a safe person? Is this not a safe situation to be in? We're always weighing it up, and then we make those beliefs. And then once we go 7, 8 years of age above that, then it's automatic. We just don't question them. But bringing it back to the conversation you were saying there about having conversations, absolutely. Our parents are no longer with us. They did the best they could with us, and they did, in many, many ways, a great job. And who's here to say one way or another, could things have been different? But at the end of the day, they did the best they could, as we all do. And there's conversations that maybe I think, when I look back on it now, I would like to have maybe been brought up a bit more tougher, as in, get in tune with who you are, stand up for yourself, just man up to things, and find out who you really are. But we would never have had those conversations in the 60s and 70s and 80s. They were not talked about. It was, if you felt, you talk about the pain in the stomach, just take a cocodamol or milk of magnesia or something like that, or just whatever. Now it's a case of, okay, so what is that feeling in your body? Where do you feel that in your body? What's the emotion maybe behind that? Okay, did something happen recently, or what you're thinking, what's your self-talk? There's so many areas, and this is the good thing about what we're doing today. We'll be able to explore this in more detail with people, But back then, it wasn't. So it makes me wonder now how people were prepared. I know there's always going to be people watching this who are going to say, "Oh, for goodness sake, just suck it up, get on with it. That's life." And there's an element of that, tough love. But at the same time, it's made so much easier when I now know what I believe, so much easier when you start to trust your gut. And I work with a lot of teachers using the EFT, the tapping, and I've helped quite a few students in groups and also one-to-ones. And the one thing that I always come back to in any of the type of work I do is that whenever you start to tune into who you really are and go with your gut and trust your gut, and if you've switched that off for a long time, I'm 54 and I come on 55, I've switched that off for a few years. It's not easy to get it back, but it's possible. Whenever we're children and we go in and we all were P1 and we wear a wee uniform and our shorts and wee gym dresses and stuff like that, that's necessary for us to all look the same, behave the same, go into the classroom, and the teachers want us to be individuals, but it's so much easier to have everybody regimented and turning up at school at 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock or 2 o'clock. That's the way things work. And then we go to church and then we're told this is what you must do or you must do that. And so in many ways, for our safety, shall we say, we're conditioned to be a certain way, to walk holding hands all the way down the street. You see the wee kids walking down there for safety, and that's true. But at the same time, when we look at the world as a really scary place and a fearful place, and then we're conditioned in certain ways to be the same, to look the same, to behave the same, we switch off. We switch off our guidance. We switch off who we are. And then all of a sudden you turn 18 and you go out into the world and you think, this isn't working. This isn't working for me. And with the best will in the world and the best love in the world, and we want to get our kids ready for that, if we haven't had those conversations, hey, mom or dad, I don't feel so good today. I don't want to go to school. And we have the time to sit down with them and think, why? What are you feeling? What are you thinking? Obviously, we don't ask them all these questions one after the other. Just trying to tease out what it is they believe, what do they feel, and then clear it and say, okay, well, maybe you could think of it like this. We don't want to go to school, but think how good it would be for you to be with your friends, to play and so on and learn. We all do that. But if we are so fearful as I was growing up, I just was afraid of everything. Life in Northern Ireland back then wasn't easy. But I just looked at everything as fear, and I switched off who I was and my role. And I believe as a practitioner therapist, all I'm doing is getting back to who I really am. And that's where the confidence comes. And that's where working with young people, quite often the time comes whenever they realize that they don't know who they are, and that's a great place to be, because then you've got the opportunity to think, well, how do you want to be? How do you want to think? How do you want to talk to yourself? How would you like to behave? And that can be a bit uncomfortable. In many ways, it's become uncomfortable with feeling uncomfortable.